subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I'm with Manisha Priyam, well-known political scientist, and Yashwant Deshmukh, psephologist, political observer, and owner of See Voter Polls. And today we're discussing the big Modi reshuffle, rejig, overhaul, however you might want to describe it. Welcome, Manisha and Yashwant, to the Print debates. So, Manisha, your first comments, Manisha, on the big Modi overhaul of his cabinet. 77 members now in the big council of ministers. I think he can go up to a maximum of 81. But your first thoughts on what he intends to do and what he has done today.
So I think this is a real change from the days of minimum government, maximum governance. I think that there is still the intention to do maximum governance, but size is important. This is what cabinets have looked like, old style, where the center has tried to represent its various regions, the change and churn in state level politics, the politics of the dominant, but also the politics of the underclass that shred apart the Congress dominance, or the Congress model, so to say, the model of accommodation that was put aside in the early 1990s. And since then, the Hindi heartland has been ruled by the divide of what has been called the Mandal and the Kamandal. But what we see today is, of course, the Kamandal base being intact, the Ram Mandir, the BJP almost having nearly fulfilled its promise, both with legal support coming on the making of the temple, the design, etc., all in place. But the BJP now not resting, having got its core voters on its side, it's now spreading its tentacles and already has since 2014 towards usurping, zooming within its fold, the Kamandal politics. Therefore, the most notable aspect of this cabinet rebuilding, as I would say, regenerating, is sui generis tabula rasa. It's a new cabinet with representation from the bottommost social castes. And India, as you know, social castes are a representative of reality. If you see between Eastern UP and Bihar, some of the important non-Yadav OBC castes all having been accommodated, Dalits accommodated. In Karnataka, the balance of the Liga and Liga maintained. So we can go state by state.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more in detail. Yashwant, your views on, has Prime Minister Narendra Modi put his stamp on this cabinet? It's a big expansion, reshuffle, overhaul, however you describe it. What has he done?
I think it is a very meticulous exercise for sure. I mean, no two opinion about it. It has been a very meticulous exercise. And as Manisha has said it, I will just continue from where she has left. In the last 7 years, the electoral politics of India, or the success of the BJP, if I may say so, has been largely with in non-Yadav OBC and the non-Jatav Dalits. And in that belt, I certainly agree that they are now probably carrying Mandal inside the Kamandal and taking it along with that. And this is something which is a very interesting phenomena to observe.
Explain what that means. Both you and Manisha said this, carrying Mandal inside Kamandal. Explain what that means.
See, the core ideological things that they wanted to deliver on 370 or be it Ayodhya or for that matter, to a large extent, even on the issue of triple talaq, and which is now certainly going to go on the Uniform Civil Code discussion in the near future. I think they have carried their core base along with them on those particular things. I think that engineering has become the base. Earlier, you remember, Jyoti, BJP has been having a base of upper caste. Brahman or Baniyo ki party, jo 50 saal tak thi, it is no more that. In the last 7 years, that entire base has gone out of the window. The base is now the non-Yadav OBC and the non-Jatav Dalits, and it's only the top, which is now the upper caste politics, which we keep on listening too much of anger of the Brahmins in UP, for example. But we forget that electorally speaking, that number probably is critical to the BJP, which it used to 15 years back. That dynamics has changed. But having said that, while we go into much more details, because this exercise is not just about UP and Bihar, there are so many things which are very, very critical to observe, particularly the focus on the greenfield states, as I have mentioned to you in my previous discussion with you, Jyoti, how BJP is looking at the greenfield state on the eastern side from top to bottom, where they might like to compensate the loss of the seats, perceived loss of seats, probable loss of seats in 2024 from the saturation state, as I mentioned them. So the more focus on the greenfield states, away from the focus of the saturation state, that's very critical. But at the end of the day, I don't want to lose the idea of the big picture. As we are talking, the live news tracker poll that we run on all India basis, right now I am looking at 56% people giving a thumbs up, being enthusiastic about the new cabinet reshuffle. 44% are not really that enthusiastic on this one. And the two questions in today's news tracker, which are bringing critical, the way I look at them statistically, almost about 54% are still saying that the things are not looking rosy in the next 1 year. And almost about 70% saying that, the inflation is hitting them and it is now hitting their food consumption patterns.
That is what,
the big picture.
Manisha, can you pick that up and say, say 56% people, according to Yashwant's tracker, have given a thumbs up, 44% have not. But neither of you in the last few minutes have, for once, even once, used the word COVID pandemic. I mean, we saw how over the last couple of months, we have been through such a violent phase of the pandemic. I mean, there's no other word to describe it. It's been a carnage. But Manisha, you have not talked about it. Yashwant is not talking about it. To me, it seems as if this cabinet reshuffle is happening in another planet, कि जहाँ पे pandemic हुआ ही नहीं है.
No, I don't think that is correct. I mean, if time had been permitted, I would have said, when I said the governance areas, for example, health, education, rural livelihoods, it's all with respect to the COVID pandemic. I said that, it's not just the jabs, health infrastructure needs to be delivered with respect to the pandemic. When I spoke about rural livelihoods, the underlying idea is that COVID has made the footloose labor that was doing building and construction in urban centers go back to rural areas. So rural distress that had found an ease in migration, the circulatory labor that spent 6 months working in urban centers and went back with money, I think that chain has been broken. So in a sense, I also mean to say that these social representation of the backward caste, the extremely poor communities, you get them from the backward caste, but not just the backward caste, the new leaders. Look at Nishit Pramanik, for example, a school teacher from Kuch, Bihar, the Rajbanshis in the area. Barla, for example, working with the tea estate, garden estate. Now, the most vulnerable by definition are the ones who have been hit hardest by the COVID, not just the disease, but in terms of the livelihoods being sucked up completely. So you had lives, you had livelihoods. My argument is precisely that this team will have to deliver on the ground to the poorest of the poor. Otherwise, their answerability and accountability to those whom they represent is far higher. People like you and me are at least 10, 20 steps removed from this level where John Darla may be operating, Mr. Tudu, for example. These are absolutely ground level workers. Where before would you have seen an opportunity for such people to become cabinet ministers? Right. They would have only been writing letters to cabinet ministers. So I think the real rejig has been that there is no behalfism now. Representatives of the poor from their caste community, because if you are able to repose trust and faith, you can fearlessly talk to them. So it's opening up, even from Mr. Yogi, for example, it's opening up a whole new flank of people who are from the poorest caste. They will have their representatives who they can walk up to and complain if things are not going right. So the times ahead will be very challenging, lot of questioning from the people. Yes, COVID is the reality. I mean, why else do you think Harshvardhan has been dropped? I mean,
that's my next question to you, Yashwant. Harshvardhan has been dropped. Ravi Shankar Prasad, who is a spokesperson for this government, has been dropped. What is Prime Minister Modi doing or trying to do?
Well, I think I think you raised a very the right question when you asked why are we not talking about COVID, for a simple factor. that we, all of us, I mean, and at least for me, I can say, I was expecting this to be a more of a firefighting exercise. I was kind of expecting that probably few names will come in, and Dr. Harshvardhan will be dropped and his deputy would be dropped, so that there is a political message that, okay, we found a scapegoat and, we know where to blame and the guy has been dropped. Right. But that is not the message which has been gone, right, Jyoti? Because with such a sweeping change where 6 of other huge big changes have happened, big names have been dropped. So Dr. Harshvardhan goes out as one of those who has been dropped. And certainly that is a very smart way of not just saying that we did manage to change, and yet not showing that guilt factor, not accepting that, okay, we did only because of COVID, and that way. So they kind of managed to ensure that there was such a big change, massive change in totality, that the COVID-related changes happen to become a part of it. Now, when I say that, the focus, of course, is not that the COVID is in the back burner and people have forgot about the things, because COVID itself is not just one thing. Just like Manisha said, that the kind of problems it has created economically and socially for bottom of the pyramid, that is not just health. It has impacted way beyond health. It has impacted the livelihood, the sheer existence. The number of people who have gone, who have been pushed from the better off to have-nots. Those numbers are startling. So this is why right at this moment, if 72% approximately say that they are kind of in a way adjusting their ration or fooding habits to cope up with the inflation, that doesn't go unnoticed. I specifically brought that number to you, Jyoti, right now, because beyond all these changes and the political numbers, there are big issues of the governance which the government and Mr. Modi have to look into. Of the unemployment, of the economics, about the inflation, and they are not getting unnoticed. But however, I cannot help but appreciate the political messaging that they did not allow these changes to only look in a COVID-specific firefighting. It is such a huge change. इतना बड़ा हिला दिया पूरा पेड़ कि इतनी सारी चीजें टपकी कि केवल डॉक्टर हर्षवर्धन के टपकने को कोई नहीं देख रहा है. They are looking at, अरे ये भी टपक गए, वो भी टपक गए, कितने सारे टपक गए. And there are so many new faces that we cannot just help but notice the political nuance or the equationing at the grassroots level which these changes are going to matter.
राइट. मनीषा, ये बताइए मुझे कि आपके जहन में क्या प्राइम मिनिस्टर नरेंद्र मोदी अपने आप को डिसोसिएट कर रहे हैं, जो भी पहाड़ टूटा है कोविड को लेकर, तो क्या वो अपने आप को डिसोसिएट कर रहे हैं इतना बड़ा मंत्रिमंडल बना के, और जैसे आपने कहा एक कास्ट रिप्रेजेंटेशन जो है बहुत बारीकी से उन्होंने किया है. व्हाट इज दिस द बिगर मैसेज?
No. What is the bigger message? The bigger message is that Mr. Modi and his government have taken a lesson from the West Bengal poll results. They realize certainly that they need to have openings at the bottom of the pyramid. They realize very much that social inclusion is possibly the way forward. Now,
so you're going back to social inclusion. You're going back to
complete this point.
Sorry.
Now, how do we expect the Prime Minister to have addressed COVID in Ashoka, in the Rashtrapati Bhavan, in the Darbar Hall where the oath was taken? How else could he have addressed COVID? I think the strongest lesson has been that not just Harshvardhan, some of the most outspoken and strong ministers have been dropped. I'm very sure the reasons are not simply non-performance. So yes, if you want me to say that a lesson was taken from COVID failures, it has been taken. But whether Mr. Modi himself will come out today at the point of oath taking and say that this is the responsibility and that won't come like this. On another occasion, the Prime Minister can be asked whether he wants to have a press deliberation, whether he wants to take questions from the people of this country through the fourth estate, yes, that question would be very appropriate then. But today, if you ask me, as far as the messaging is concerned, the axe has fallen on the health minister. And I do think that that will be considered a strong message as far as people are concerned. Right. I have no doubts. At 12 doctors, for example, I don't know who's going to get which portfolio. I have no idea. But these will not be lost. As far as the government is concerned, the messaging has been very strong today. Okay. A direct conversation with Prime Minister Modi can be the order of another day, but today was not the occasion.
Right. Yashwant, coming to you, going forward, next year we have the 5 big elections. Of course, the biggest of them all is Uttar Pradesh. Aapke raay mein, what is the message today from today's reshuffle?
I think they have given up on Punjab for sure, because I don't think Mr. Puri is something which his promotion has anything to do with the Punjab election. I think his promotion has everything to do with his competence and the way he delivers, and then the Prime Minister feels what he can do for him rather than Punjab election. But the most critical thing from Uttar Pradesh, Anupriya Patel has been taken in. That is where the Kurmi vote strong belt comes in. They are extremely critical votes in Purvanchal and in Awadh, Jyoti, and in Western UP, where the farmer issues has been critical. RLD under Jayant Chaudhary is making very strong noise over there, and along with Akhilesh, tie-up, they might create trouble for the BJP in the Western UP. So they are trying to ensure that they do not lose grip on the Awadh and the Purvanchal. That is why Anupriya Patel is back, Apna Dal is back, and that is a message for smaller parties which are in the coalition that, okay, you are being taken in, you will be taken care of. And also the fact that, the one critical thing of promoting or giving due recognition to the talents which are being acquired from other parties. Mm-hmm. It started with Himanta Biswa Sarma's elevation to the Chief Minister's post. And I think with Kiran Rijiju getting into cabinet, I think he will be now could be the point person for the Northeastern politics, which Himanta has been taking care of all alone. Now that he is a Chief Minister, he might not be in a position to look into rest of the Northeast, but probably with Kiran Rijiju helping him or giving prominence, that could be the name. With G. Kishan Reddy is literally, as per me, is now the BJP's chief ministerial face as far as Telangana politics is concerned. So many names from Maharashtra. I mean, critical names. And the way Santosh Gangwar has been dropped, that's a very clear message to the rank and file in Uttar Pradesh. Everybody has to get in line behind Mr. Yogi, because that is the face, and you have to win an election. You cannot question him, and you cannot dilute the political agenda. So all in all, I believe that the messaging has been good. Messaging has been correct in the right way. With Dr. Harshvardhan and his deputy's case, I think the health ministry message has been given. But more important than that, I believe that the fresh names, fresh faces, the technocrats, the focus should be and could be on the governance now. Mm-hmm. And if they manage to deliver in the next 2 years on the governance front, then this could go as a winner. But if it is just a symbolic, cosmetic thing to do, then I guess that they will be in trouble with the inflation, unemployment, economics situation and other things in the ground. And I don't think people are going to forget it very soon, the way the COVID second wave impacted big number of families. Yeah. So it's a very, very fine critical balance. I think we all expected this exercise to be a firefight on the damage that has happened during the COVID wave 2. But this exercise certainly was a much bigger agenda than just at the COVID. So the COVID became a part and parcel of that agenda, not just as the focus the way we would have liked to focus.
Manisha, explain to me, you also have to go very quickly, but explain to me, with Uttar Pradesh being the big election next year. Now, how is the relationship between Prime Minister Modi, Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath? क्योंकि हाल ही में हमने जो देखा है कि लॉट्स ऑफ आरएसएस के भी जो लीडर्स हैं वो भी यूपी गए, लखनऊ गए, उनसे बातचीत हुई, और यूपी में हमने the pictures of hundreds of people whose bodies were immersed into the Ganga. So, these pictures that were coming out of UP, not very nice at all. So how is this going to be now going forward, this relationship between Prime Minister Modi and Yogi Adityanath, and how are they going to deal with UP?
So I think, as far as I, as an analyst, observe this, Prime Minister Modi is a pragmatic politician. Not just UP, in Karnataka, if you see, for the moment, Mr. Yadiyurappa has had Shobhaji in the cabinet. She is a Vokkaliga. There's been a balancing out with the Lingayats, and there's also been a balancing with the Madiga community being included. But I think the lesson there is that deliver us the state elections, and then we will see what has to be done. So no really stirring the pot there. As far as UP is concerned, I think the exercise has been long. The accommodation of Mr. Arvind Sharma, the bureaucrat, in the party fold there means that the party machinery will be directly overseen by the center, by Mr. Modi, Mr. Amit Shah. You already have Sunil Bansalji there. So as far as the party machinery is concerned, there is a parallel setup there. And whether Mr. Yogi wants to talk to Mr. Modi or not, I mean, those are things that journalists can find out. But analysts like me try and see it from a distance. And as far as I understand it, the chessboard moves, even for the state elections, are being made by Mr. Modi. Getting Anupriya Patel in, for example, there is an Om Prakash Rajbhar who's dallying with the Aam Aadmi Party, with the Samajwadi Party. But it's Mr. Modi who's delivered by getting the Kurmi and the Kushwaha blocks, the non-Yadav OBCs being consolidated there, the Dalit votes being consolidated by spreading out, getting Kaushal Kishorji there, getting Mr. Baghel from Agra. So you see that there has been, diversity has been possibly the card. Now, I hope that these are people from the ground, these are leaders from the ground, which I believe they are. The questioning of Mr. Yogi's government will be far stronger. That's what I'm trying to say. That, once you get to backward caste leadership is very important. Once you get people from the caste community, the fearlessness of people to come and report or complain, grievance is far higher, far more open. And therefore, the pressure on Mr. Yogi's government will be far higher. I really wish this exercise had happened before COVID. The questioning would have been so much more stronger. So I believe that voice, grievance, redress, all of that, as far as Mr. Yogi is concerned, whether he talks to Mr. Modi or not, there is a party machinery that's directly in control of Mr. Modi and Mr. Amit Shah. There's also the questioning of Mr. Yogi by these, leaders who are from the, and they are from the allies. The allies, remember, the allies are fearless. If you show them the eye, they are going to show you the door, because they have to operate amongst their caste constituents by saying that I am your fearless leader. So the moment you decide to get not your own party men, BJP also has its own Kurmi leaders. Why do you get it from the outside? To show to that community that I specially acknowledge your leadership. Now, by specially acknowledging a Kurmi leadership of Mr. Nitish Kumar and Mr. RCP Singh and Ms. Anupriya Patel, who's not such a seasoned leader and has dissidents in her own family. But the big message to the community is, to the Kurmi and the Kushwaha community, these are pan-UP communities, remember. These are communities that spread into Bihar. These are communities that come to Jharkhand. You have Sudesh Mahato, the Mahato issue in Jharkhand. So the Kurmi community will be a strong community that will question any other form of dominance, Thakurwad or anything else that you call it. So yes, there is grievance redress, there is accountability, but it's happening through caste idioms of the poorest of the poor. However, having laid out these propositions, the days to come will be days to see that the tragedy that Uttar Pradesh or the poorest of the poor have seen in COVID times, I sincerely hope that if these are the meanings I draw from this cabinet reshuffle, I sincerely hope that in health, in education, but even more in rural livelihoods, this government does indeed deliver. For this, there's only 1 or 2 technocrats are required. The money has to be brought and you have to sell your assets. There are no other ways round now. Right. You won't grow. Civil aviation, rejig, etc. Few people can do all that. Yeah. But the bigger thing is that redistribution, that is the agenda of the government. And redistribution, where leaders of the people can go back to say that yes, we earned but we are now course correcting. I mean, there's no question that we will not question. We will.
Right.
But today I see that some course correction is indeed for UP also.
Okay. Yashwant, the question to you, has, what Manisha said just now, do you feel that Yogi Adityanath has been damaged by the COVID crisis? This attempt at, doing a coalition of castes, whether it's the Kurmis or the other backward castes, the Dalits, how do you look at it?
Well, definitely yes. I mean, let me put it this way, Jyoti. 2017 verdict was not to Mr. Yogi. It was Mr. Modi's verdict. BJP got 300 plus seats, not because of Mr. Yogi. They got these many seats because of Mr. Modi. So it was an asset which was given on a platter to Mr. Yogi. Now with all the misgovernance, with the COVID deaths, with the internal communication issues within the BJP, so much of anger of the BJP MLAs and ministers against their own chief minister, the way, the style of functioning, all that has not gone unnoticed. And if the friction between the PM and the CM is an equation to look into, then make no mistake, there is no competition whatsoever as far as the popularity of Mr. Modi and Mr. Yogi is concerned. Mr. Yogi is popular when compared to Akhilesh or Mayawati or other state leaders. No question about that. But if we are talking about, is there any confusion among the BJP voters about Mr. Modi and Mr. Yogi? I'm sorry, there is no competition whatsoever.
Right.
I believe that BJP has given a really long rope to Mr. Yogi. I believe that they did not anticipate that while promoting him at the national level, making, further using right up to Hyderabad elections and to West Bengal election, he might become a bigger problem at home. I guess that they have taken a note of that. But now is not the time, according to them. I guess that taking on Yogi 6 months before the UP election is not a very smart thing to do. So they are right now going to accommodate all the smaller parties which are electorally important. They will try to get the electoral arithmetic in place because in UP this is what matters, in Bihar this is what it matters more than the performance. I mean, I'm not very happy to say that, but as Shankar Thakur and I have quoted him more often than not, he has always said this to me in joke as well as in all his seriousness, that in India the popularity and the performance don't really go together. At least in UP and Bihar it doesn't go together, for that matter.
Yeah.
So that problem with Yogi has not got unnoticed. I believe that they are not going to disturb him before the elections are there. But once the elections are over and they get the mandate, which they will almost certainly get it because the trackers are very clearly showing the gap is more than 10%.
You think that BJP is going to return to power in UP?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't have any. I mean, as on today, if you will ask me, I have not a shade of doubt on that, because the equation, I mean, the arithmetic is 40% plus for the BJP, and Akhilesh is not even touching 30% at this point of time. So with the triangular or four-cornered contest, 10-point lead, I mean, arithmetically, it is a game, one-way traffic. I don't see. यार अगर खत्म भी हुआ और गिरे भी 100 सीट कम भी हो गई तो भी 250 पे आ जाएंगे. They need 203. So yes, there would be a damage in seats, no doubt about that, of the non-performing MLAs and in the Western UP because of the Kisan Andolan. But BJP is, as on today, going to win UP. But after winning that election, I am absolutely sure that the Shangenians of what has been done by the present chief minister in UP are not going to be just overlooked. There are mechanisms which are going to be in place, including these regional party. Why exactly there was no concrete effort from the BJP to bring in bigger Jat netas from the Western UP and to plug in the leak? Why from Eastern UP? Because Eastern UP is where Yogi's equation is. For all practical matters, Yogi is an Eastern UP leader. For all practical matters. Let's be very clear about that. And by propping up all these names, he is being made more accountable, not letting it, not being let go, just easy.
Yeah.
I think the Yogi thing is going to be tackled after the elections are done and dusted a year from now. I mean, it is not going to be just let it go kind of thing. But yes, governance matters, and this is where the new rejig is going to be seen in. And in the 6 months, I genuinely believe and I hope that it works. As nobody wants us to fail, and particularly in these critical times.
Right.
So even with all non-partisan things, we are just hoping that whatever Mr. Modi is trying to do, it actually works in the terms of governance.
The last question to you. We've seen that how Prime Minister Narendra Modi is putting his stamp on this cabinet reshuffle. But do you see in the tracker that you just quoted, for example, where you said that 44% of the population is hoping that much more is being done, especially in terms of governance issues, roti kapda makan, khas karke jobs. But do you see that Prime Minister Modi is damaged in any way from COVID, or do you feel that people are still willing to give him a chance?
Well, there was a loss of ratings which we reported and which made headlines all across the globe, no doubt about that. But we should also keep in the big picture, Jyoti. Mr. Modi's rating from the highs of 60s and 70s went down crashing to 35, 36, and now right now repairing back to 50s, and that recovery has slightly happened. I mean, it's a U-shaped recovery. It's not a V-shaped recovery as we have seen in case of handling the COVID situation. That is a V-shaped recovery. But having said that, this drop in ratings have to be seen in the context of Mr. Modi's own parameters. His own scale is 60s and 70s, which is unusually high. His drop to 40s is seen as a crashing, which it is, like 20-point drop is a crash. But that 40 also is big. It's like, saying that a student who has been scoring 95, 97%, if he or she scores 75%, we say, wow,
तो second, उनके नीचे second कौन आता है और कितने percentage points से?
उनके नीचे second जो आता है, और अभी भी जो number आ रहा है, मैं अभी screen पे भी देख रहा हूँ ज्योति, that number is still don't know, can't say, which is like 20 across 19.8%, and number 3 is Rahul Gandhi, which is still hovering around 12%.
Oh, so there is no fight. So there's no competition.
Exactly. मैं ये कह रहा हूँ, आप उस स्टूडेंट को ये डांट सकते हैं कि यार तुम 95% लाते थे, तुम्हारे 75 कैसे हो गए? लेकिन हमको ये भी ध्यान रखना पड़ेगा कि बचे हुए क्लास के सारे स्टूडेंट जो है वो पासिंग मार्क्स भी नहीं ला पा रहे. तो we certainly need to look into the crash or the drop of the rating as far as Mr. Modi's own high standards are concerned. But we cannot help but take notice of the fact that the opposition is still far behind. Mr. Rahul Gandhi's ratings are not going up, and still there is a big vacuum of people who are saying don't know, can't say as the second choice of the prime ministerial candidate. So that we are still far away from there. However, I'm causing the loss of jobs, the economics, and those things are taking a really long curve to repair, and that should be cause of concern for Mr. Modi's own high standards. If he wants to get back where he still feels that I am the numero uno to the rating of 60s and 70s, then these governance issues have to be put on the high priority as far as his own working is concerned.
Yashwant Deshmukh, thank you so much for your time for explaining these things, and I think the figures that you just quoted in a sense reveals that Prime Minister's biggest rival is actually himself. It's not Rahul Gandhi or it's anybody else in the country. So he is still strong and he is head and shoulders above everybody else, every other political leader at least. But thank you for explaining the message of the Modi reshuffle, the cabinet reshuffle. Thank you so much for joining in the print debates.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.